So, to start off with, what made you want to apply for the role of Wellbeing and Community Officer?
Hi, so first of all, I'm Tom Underwood, for those of you who didn't realise already. And for me, I've been working pretty much solely for my past 2 years on university at improving the well-being of the university as a whole. And I really wanted the chance to continue that into another year in a more official standpoint.
Yeah, I've been the women's officer for the past year, and from the kind of experiences that I've had, I've seen really concretely all the things that need doing. And essentially, I felt that it would be of use to put those kind of experiences to a good purpose for another year and really do it from a kind of, same as Tom actually, from a more official standpoint.
Okay, so as you both kind of mentioned there, what kind of experiences do you feel you've built up to make you appropriate for the role? And are you at all hesitant about the extensive responsibility of being a sabbatical officer?
Well, I enjoy being busy doing those kind of things, which is why, I packed in as much as I could into my manifesto. But I don't really feel like hugely worried about it, because I know that UC they've worked really hard over the past 2 years to try and make their role more supported. And especially from the elections last year, the kind of problems with social media have sort of been resolved now. So in that sense, I'm fairly confident about that.
And Tom?
Yeah, well, as far as experience goes, I was chair of student support and wellbeing in Constantine for last year. I'm also currently the co-campaign manager for the Mental Health Awareness Project. And I've done various sort of policy review things for national mental health charities, including Mind. I think obviously there's a lot of pressure and a lot of responsibility for sabbatical officers. But I think a part of what appeals to me most about the job is the amount of responsibility that is given. The amount of influence that these people have on the way that university works and the way that students can experience their university life.
Okay, so to reflect on this year's officer, Dom Smithies, what did you think of how he acted his role this year, and what did you think worked well for students, and what would you say could have been improved?
I think Dom's done a fantastic job this year. I'm going to hold my hands up. Like, I've worked with him pretty extensively for the last year, as has Mia. And his support for the Liberation and Welfare Network, carrying that on, has been absolutely fantastic. If there is one thing that I think could have been improved on, perhaps his engagement with off-campus students could definitely have been improved.
Okay.
I'm hesitant to kind of criticise the sabbatical team too much, because obviously it's the university that they're trying to lobby to do lots of things that we need doing. So I think it's more like the university who want to point the finger at than the sabbatical office. And again, they've been really good at supporting everyone all year, and they've done their absolute best to try and get as much of their manifesto done as possible. But again, it's that kind of system level change that's really important at this stage more than anything.
Okay, so when we look at your manifestos, both of you discuss adding extra support for students that they might access prior to the official wellbeing services. So Tom, you suggest what you refer to as an extra tier of support at college level, whilst Mia, you want to create a centralised welfare request system on eVision. So why do you feel these approaches would be useful to students, and in what way will they combat current issues?
So that kind of idea was one of the central reasons why I wanted to run in the first place, because I felt that it would it's not taking apart anything that already exists, but making sure that people aren't slipping through the gaps in the current system. So the reason we even had a devolved system was because if you have lots of doors, then you're more likely to get to lots of people. But then the issue with that is that it relies a lot on people having having the logical capacity to really think through their options, which isn't necessarily the case if you're in a difficult situation. Amongst other issues, where it being uniformity of information isn't necessarily there. Generally, it's a kind of very confusing system. People don't know whether to go to the Advice and Support Centre or to support services, to Open Door, to disability, to their college welfare, to their tutors. And it's not really clearly defined. So I felt like a really easy way to do that would be to have a request system on eVision. And that would also mean that there was a kind of timeline that was monitored, and that there was a welfare advisor who would take care of that person when they were putting in a request and make sure they were checked up on after it was resolved, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I completely stand behind what Mia said. I mean, there's a huge range of services available at York. And I think it's really important that we utilise those as best we can. The collegiate system that we've got here is very unique in a sense, and it's also one that really needs to be played up in terms of its ability to support welfare. Obviously, with the changes for the contracted hours for college tutors, their role in things have slightly altered now. They're not so much a first-line support welfare system as perhaps they used to be. And that might be for the best. We all understand that they're postgraduate students themselves and that they've got their own things to worry about. So that's why I'd like to incorporate an extra tier of support at a college level to ensure that we're making as much use as possible of the localized communities that are built up within the colleges, and so that the staff there are able to treat them, as Mia was saying, before they slip through the gaps.
Okay, and another point you both kind of make a note of paying attention to is student response, but you do so in different ways again. So, Mia, you refer to a termly debate forum where students bring up a specific issue and solutions are discussed, whilst Tom, you reference establishing a student response policy regarding external speakers and events. So, how important do you think first-hand engagement with students is? And did you choose your specific approaches towards... How do you choose specific approaches towards gaining student feedback?
So student feedback is the absolute crux of the way the university works. At the end of the day, the student union is a democracy. We're all here to vote for one another, and we're all here to vote for policies. That's how the university gets things done. So I think that student engagement is absolutely key. I would also not dismiss the use of student surveys. We all have that sort of mindset that student surveys, they don't work, nobody fills them in. But a lot of the time, we've had some really positive responses from student surveys. It's also useful to bear in mind the uselessness of study groups, of taking key students and sort of asking them what it is they want in a room where we sit down with them. So there's plenty of ways that we can engage with students.
So I kind of suggested that we should have a termly debate forum where students can nominate an issue that they feel is important to the university. And instead of kind of making it what's happened in the past where kind of two sides get quite aggressive and it can get kind of nasty, especially in the kind of two referendums that we've had, I wanted it to be something that would be positive and that it would mean people not only got to have their say on issues that they felt were important, but there would be an end result, and that at the end of the debate that both sides work together to find a solution, submit it as policy to UC. And even if it was only just the one per term, that would make such a difference to democracy at York and be really important.
Okay, so in terms of considering all students, as you've both kind of summed up in terms of student response, do you think community and wellbeing might focus too much on liberation networks, and they take up a lot of time as opposed to students not in these groups?
I think that's a really interesting question. The nature of the community and wellbeing officer is one that deals with both wellbeing and community, obviously. And a large part of the community and of the things that they engage with is campaigning and lobbying for students who are part of this liberation group, for LGBTQ students, for disabled students, for BAME students. And so I don't feel like the community wellbeing officer necessarily spends too much time on those students, because at the end of the day, those are the students who need to be focused on. They're the students who need to be lobbied for. They're the students who need to engage in student activism.
I think also it's worth saying that there's no way of us even measuring any of those kind of ideas, really, because we don't know how many students would actually be in any of the liberation groups if everyone knew about them. Certainly when I was in first year, I had no idea they even existed. I can't speak for the entire university, but I know that most people I knew in first year had no idea. One of my policies actually mentions that I think it would be worth having a liberation opt-in form before people actually arrive, so that people would have a kind of access to ready-made support, but also especially for students who might not be wanting to throw themselves out there in the same way that other people might be comfortable with, and actually having access to a liberation network, if you want to be in one and you can be, is actually a really nice thing to do, but not enough people even know about it, so we can't actually measure any of those things, if that makes sense.
Okay, so more into kind of spreading awareness of it as well, would you say?
Less awareness, more like concrete ways of making sure that people would know about it. So if before people arrived at university, they got a form saying if you're in any of these, then you're more than welcome to apply, fill in the form, and then you can get given all the information on it and become part of it before you arrive.
Okay. a couple of more ambitious policies on your manifestos now. So, Tom, you decided to reopen investigations into USU letting agencies with regard to student housing. What is the feasibility of this, given that the idea has been gotten rid of before? And do you have a backup plan to support student housing if this cannot be achieved?
Yeah, absolutely. So this plan has been started to have been implemented in the past, especially under Callum Taylor's presidency back a few years ago. It got as far as a referendum, which was passed by 90% majority, but then was shot down by the trustee board because it was said to be financially insecure. Now it's time to reinvestigate the possibility of that. Now that the university is in a better position, with several years down the line, it's definitely worth reopening that channel of discussion. And I think if the students are behind it ultimately, it's definitely something that we can work towards, if not in our year of sabbatical officer terms, then at least set that precedence up for the future. However, I realise that it's an ambitious plan, so yes, I do have a fallback. This is something that I would like to do anyway, and it involves regulating the way that letting agents that currently exist in York, such as Sinclair and Adam Bennett, operate on campus. So currently, the USU website advertises Sinclair, as well as allowing them and Adam Bennett and a number of other private letting agents engage in housing fairs. What I'd like to do is to extend the current university's vetting procedures to ensure that there is an adequate quality control on all estate agents, landlords, and letting agencies. And until they meet a certain criteria and a certain standard level, those organisations will not be allowed to be advertised or appear on campus.
Right. And Mia, in light of the university's budget increase into mental health, I presume you'd want to expand existing support existing support services for students and promote them more. I understand this year there was more of a push to promote Nightline, but to what extent can we actually expand or promote services and still create an effect? Or might we need more innovative approach into something new?
What do you mean by into something new? Do you mean replacing support services with another service entirely?
I'd say kind of liaising with all the support services to make an entire efficient system so that all students can be seen as soon as possible.
So that's essentially what I've done through the centralised welfare system that I kind of proposed alongside the devolved system. And my manifesto kind of focuses a lot on that, and also kind of data collection of the kind of welfare requests that we have to kind of build an efficient system that would actually work, kind of like you suggested. But in terms of student support services, like specifically kind of Open Door and those kind of ones that everyone knows about, the kind of important thing to take away in the on the money side of things is actually doing a kind of more research-based investigation into those kind of things that we really need. So specialist support for particular kind of issues. Again, this ties back into the data collection issue that I've proposed, because we don't actually do any data collection on the kind of welfare requests that the university have. So we have actually no way of telling, which is why it's one of my policies.
Just to expand on that, if we've got time. I think it's also really, really important to extend students' awareness of services that exist off campus and that aren't part of the university. So services like iApt and Generate are two fantastic services that are very specialised. And I think it's definitely worth looking into how we can collaborate with those and the York Council in order to expand student services as best as possible.
Okay, so a question we've had from Twitter. What would you do about increasing demand for the Open Door service in terms of mental health that we've just been discussing?
By increasing demand, does that mean increasing the numbers of people that can be seen? Or does that mean...
I think to clarify, it meant the increasing demand for Open Door.
Okay. So that's the question that's on everyone's minds, because there's a backlog of something like 4,000 people that need to be seen by Open Door. But again, this is where the kind of centralised system comes back in, because actually lots of people don't know about the kind of services that we do have. So advice and support, a couple of friends of mine in the past have needed problems that could have been resolved by them rather than Open Door. And it's that kind of idea of getting signposted to the right person first that could actually reduce some of that backlog, but also collaborating with services that we have like Survive in town and so on.
Okay, thank you very much, Tom and Mia.